Okay, just wrote a description. Let me read out the description out loud. You can read along below the stream video, below the video. So the idea is to have to add a uniform buffer or any shader resource. No, the idea is to have add uniform buffer, which is called on the ShaderInputData member of a particular pipeline characteristic range, register itself with the pipeline factory that owns that characteristic. So the user, which is window.h, calls add uniform buffer with some shader resource they have. Yeah, hello, Akil. And that is being called on the shader input data member of the current pipeline characteristic, which means that we end up in this function. And that is a member function of ShaderInputData. And the ShaderInputData knows who, which characteristic range is owning it, so that calls owning factory on the owning characteristic, and then passes on that it needs to be created. So then we get to the pipeline factory call. How many things do I have open? That was the only one. Which I did not implement yet. Okay, I was reading the description, so continuing, this can happen multiple times per shader. So this function might be called multiple times for the same uniform buffer here. Per shader resource, while it should only be created once. In which case, one pipeline factory must create a shader resource, while others must wait until that has happened before they can continue. So the pipeline factory itself is a task, which means that it runs by calling multiplex implementation with a given state. And then it continues where it left off last time. For example, it already executed the start state, did a break, left, and when it came back, the state was initialized, so it continues here. And then I wrote in the description that kind of complex interaction between threads is exactly what I wrote AIStatefulTask for. But in order to make the pipeline factories ready for such an approach, I need to allow leaving and entering their multiplex implementation, so this function, in the middle of a MultiLoop. And this stream is where I'll begin with that. So the MultiLoop starts here. This for and this while and even this if here mimic a dynamic number of nested for loops. And it is very, very hard to grasp. I always consider MultiLoop to be, almost impossible to understand. You just have to apply magic. And so I read the documentation of the MultiLoop class, and then I write this, and then hopefully what I want to have, which is also the case here. However, that is problematic, because if I add a break here, apart from that I would break out of the while loop, I could use a return, say, and to really leave the function, the multiplex implementation function. But then it's a bit hard to re-enter at the same point. So the only way we can do that is by removing the for and the while loop and implementing them in a different way. And that gives the following problem. The way it is now, and when I get to the end of the while loop, so here, and I reach this brace, it just continues at the top. If I do not have a while loop anymore, and the only way I can get to the top is by using, basically by leaving the function and re-entering it with a certain state, then it will happen that I try to leave the function with the same state, simply because I rely on a changing internal state of the object. But my AI stateful task engine is not allowing that, because it is very likely to be a bug. Therefore, I cannot really leave this function without changing the state, or without calling wait explicit. I mean, the idea is that if you want to continue running the same state and you do not want to wait, then you should not leave the function. That's, don't use a while loop, right? But now we can't use a while loop all the time. Therefore, I cannot leave the function, but I do need to jump back to the same case. Therefore, I think I want to put a for loop around the switch, so I can leave the switch, so like this. So I can leave the switch, and then it does not leave the function, it just continues at the top of the switch. So that in effect that's the same as if you leave the function and then immediately return, call the function again with the same run state. However, if I do that, then we miss the fact that there is some debug code here at the top, which balances with debug code at the bottom. Or is it? Well, I could add the for loop, of course. I could make the for loop end here. That would still work. But anyway, it's not clean, I thought. If you would throw an exception from within somewhere, then we leave this function also. But then this is not executed. So let me start with making this more clean and removing this. I'm making sure that that is being executed if we leave the function also by exception. So now I have this code must be called when we leave the function. I think I have a utils at scope end for that. Let's see how that works. In scope end, does this thing have a example? Yeah. I guess it is simply a You pass a lambda, and then when it gets restructured, then it executes a lambda. Furthermore, we have option to call maybe a few other things like now, then it executes it right at that moment. Okay, so I need an auto, and then the name is like it's not necessarily a toggle, it's restore, right? Restore the debug channel state. And then we make a lambda In order to make this work, I need access to was changed and was on, which are local variables here. And we do that before, while they still exist, I think. And that's questionable. They're constructed like this. First you construct was on, then was changed. Then we construct restore shader resource. And when we leave the function, they're destructed in the opposite order. So this one is destructed first. So these should still exist. So I can just pass them by reference. But on the other hand, they don't change anymore, they are const. So I might as well pass them by value. The equal sign here means that the default of the lambda is to make copies of whatever variables you use. And it's going to see that it doesn't know what was changed is, but was changed is defined in the scope where you create the lambda. So it makes a copy. And then the lambda itself contains a copy of those. It contains two booleans, which it will use when that is executed. So now this also works when an exception is thrown. At scope end is defined in this header. I need to add a header, I guess. Okay. Then I can put my whole switch into a for loop. With the idea that I just explained. So now I can leave the switch without changing the state, without changing run state. And then it will just re-enter at the top of the state, while this is not allowed normally. But in this case we can do that. That means, however, that if now I break, I just start at the top again. So I need to make a return for these things. Aha, that was the main reason that I use the add scope end, because now the return really leaves the function. And it was necessary anyway, because I already have a return here. Bad, Carlo. Anyway, all the breaks that I have now really should be returns. And then I can use a break to jump to the top. So now I'm going to take apart this multi-loop here. And this means that I want to be able to jump to, let's say, the top of the for loop. Yeah, no matter how you look at it, I'm going to need a case. How do you do that? I think it's better to change it into a do while loop first. Well, this is a while loop rather. Each time we enter. So if I believe this comment here, and like I said, multi-loop is so difficult that I have no idea. But I believed it. It says that mRange counters.finish should be false every time, so also the first time, which means that I might as well do the test at the bottom. How do I change this into a do while loop? Let's see. So instead of a for, I do a do. And then at the end of the do, which is at the bottom, but write it here for now. So we do our body, and then we get to the end, and I do a while. And then we also have to do this at the end. So if you want to make it perfect, then I would do if that, and then we do the, so like this, indented. Yeah, so we come here, and then if this is true, then we enter the body, and then we do the next loop, and then we do the test again, and if it is still true, we go to the top. That is the same as this for loop. But the comment says that if we enter at the top, then it is always true. So I might as well remove this if here. And then I can do, let me delete this. Let me first delete this. Wait, what does it say? This is just multi-loop magic. Okay, let's keep that. Each time we enter the top, yeah, that's maybe not true anymore. Damn it. It was multi-loop magic, but now it's even something worse. And I won't even be able to test it. That's a horrible thing, so I should not make a mistake, I think. I'm going to change into the first time, because that's really what we have. First time we enter at the top, and rain count finish should be false. Therefore, we can simply enter the do while loop. Regardless which replaces the normal multi-loop for something like that. And this is not just anymore, so I might as well remove it. And then the body starts here. So this must go to the bottom. I think the for loop did not have an opening brace, so it just should go here. Yeah. So this is now our for loop. I changed the for loop into a do while. Now I have to do that for this while loop as well, I think. Yeah, I feel that I probably should. I'm not sure if this is true the first time as well. Rain count, while rain counters is less than m characteristic I end. That determines the number of for loops that we have inside each other. I have no clue. Yeah, I don't know. Let's play it safe and use the if construct. So I'm going to replace this while loop with the following construct. If that, then do and then the body. And then we continue to the top if that if is still true. So I just have to repeat the test. Well, this does the same thing as this while loop. While it is true, we do the body, and that now happens when the if is true the first time, and then when we get to the end we test it again. Well, here I test it at the top. So let me move this comment. Random place. Okay, meaning that now I can delete this, and then this is the body, which now needs to be moved there, so I can indent it. And has to be put there. Not like that. Well, do you think this still works? Yeah, nasty that I cannot test it because I do not have any test case that uses the multi-loop. In this case, I'll just have to think about it very hard if this is correct. I think the if here, the lacking if here is good. So we get the body. The body includes if. Then we do the next loop, which is, well, because we get it to the end of the for loop. And we do the test that normally is in the for loop. Definitely a for loop here. And this is the while loop. We do the test, then we do the body, and then we do the test again. And if we get out of the while loop, we get here, which is just an if. So we get here, which is just the end of the for loop. We go to the top of the for loop. So looks like good. Looks good. So I converted it to having more or less do whiles now. And now I have to get rid of the do's because we cannot have loops. So I'm going to mimic this with, instead of jumping to the top with the do, I'm going to add a new state here. Which is then the multi-loop for top. No, why not? So the top of the multi-loop for loop. If I say it like that, maybe I should write it like that. the top of the multi-loop for loop. Yes. And then this is going to be the top of the multi-loop while loop. And this does not work, of course, because I just dumped the labels in here. Okay, so the only way we can really do this is by removing this. So I have a fall through here, which is kind of dubious. Probably can get rid of this state. Let's do this afterwards. Plus the state just changed. We are entering a new state, so I'm going to set it as well. This state is not doing anything now. I mean, if we get here, just change the state and immediately fall through to the next one. So I should get rid of it. But okay, the idea is there, and if the if would still be there, then the if could be added here. Though I don't think that's necessary. Now, what is now the problem? I deleted the do. So if I jump here to the bottom, if I get here now, then I need to jump to top of the for loop, right? This while. If this is true, I want to jump up to the top of the for loop. That means it's 11 in the morning, not 2 AM. I lost an indentation. And this while loop is now changed into if that is true. I want to return to the top, and well, with a certain state. Okay, now I forgot the name of the state. So probably not a good name then, or whatever. This. So if the code reaches this point, we normally reach the end of the for loop. So we go to the top. So the third statement of the for loop is being executed. Then we do a test, and if this is true, we want to go to the top of the for loop. If it is false, we want to leave the for loop, which means that we should get at this point indeed. However, if this is still true, then we go to the top of the for loop, and well as follows. I set the state to the top multi-loop for loop, do a break which leaves the switch, and then we get here, brings us to the top. And then, yeah, this is not correct. Okay, the run state must be changed. Normally I never do that, but in this case, it seems like a smart thing to do. So that's mimicking leaving the function and entering it at this state at the top. So now we have our for loop implemented. And now the while loop. I also have an if here. Kind of sucks, but it seems that I need another state here. Yes. And we have to jump to that state if this if is wrong, if is false. Two, and the scope here. Negate this. And then also use a break. Well, run state is... I think I should, maybe I should not even set the state, just change the run state and do a break. So then we use the added for loop at the top of the switch. And we enter again at this point here. So we just skip the while loop, which is what should be done. That was the if brace. Now I still have to get rid of this do loop. I think it just vanishes. Right, now the end of the while loop should jump back here. Here's the while loop end. So this brace is non-existent anymore, right? It's not a switch. And I'm not even sure if I ever have to jump to it, but just for clarity, let's add a bottom for the while loop. Bottom multi-loop while loop. And this is also either going to fall through or jump to the top. And we jump to the top if this is true. So this now becomes an if. I want to jump to the top. And the top is the top of the while loop, right? So it's simply this thing here. So I said run state to that thing. Well, let's keep the set state equal. Thank you, Seki and Holes. Yeah, I shouldn't have, but so I get someone over to play chess today, and I still have to go shopping for the dinner that we all ate. But yeah, you're addicted to computer or not, so I thought let's jump in front of my computer before he comes. Maybe I can finish this loop here, and then I'll do some other things in preparation. Okay, so now we get to the bottom of the while loop. We test a condition of the while loop. If it is true, set the state to top of the while loop, and then we break, which means that we get to the top of the switch, and then we simply enter at that point here, this point. State pipeline factory top multi line loop. No, here, enter here. Yeah, we are not done yet. Definitely not done yet, because I want to jump out of it like here. So I still 2 scopes to remove. This scope, but that's just this scope for the lifetime of this vector mainly, I guess. And the set bindings here. So we want to jump out of that, then we can also not have any local variables. I have to make that members of the class. What about this if? I have the feeling I have made it too difficult. In the end, I only need to split off a separate case for inside of this inner loop. Or do I see this wrong? No, I think it was right. The point is that this checks if we are in the inner loop of all the nested for loops that we are mapping. And if not yet, then we just continue constructing the nested for loops with this magic here. Which means that let me see, and that is reaching the end of the while loop, right? Yes, yes. You know, I have so many viewers lately, or at least subscribers. I'm almost considering the number of viewers that I have right now not to be many. Well, it really is actually. If that keeps growing, then I should start give actual lessons, I think. Meaning, I would like to teach you guys how to use my libraries, which is a lot of this code. But yeah, it still has to grow a bit larger before I do that. At the moment I get 50 new subscribers per day, so we might get there at the moment that think at 10,000 subscribers I should seriously start to consider trying to saving my legacy, say, and making videos that explain how to use the code that I wrote in the last 10 to 20 years instead of letting it disappear into nothingness after I disappeared. Yeah, right. Died though. In I don't know when will I die? 30 years from now, but it's much sooner that I will not be able to code anymore, I guess. Unfortunately, for those who are happy to hear that, is you need Linux for it. The code that I wrote, I've always, my most important thing always has been speed. And everything I wrote gets to the bottom of that, including using Linux-specific system calls in order to get that last bit of speed out of it. For example, the normal my memory, let me think, what's the word? Oh, this is downright scary that I cannot remember that. Semaphore. So the normal POSIX semaphore allows you to wake up exactly one thread at a time. And that is because POSIX must be supported on every operating system. And not all operating systems support waking up multiple threads. But Linux does. So I wrote a semaphore class that uses that fact, because every system call costs like 50 microseconds, which is a huge amount of time. And I don't want to, let's say, if I have 32 threads, I have 32 threads and they're all crunching at maximum speed to do whatever must be done. Then it is not unlikely that at some point my semaphore, which I'm using in my thread pool, needs to wake up multiple threads at the same time. And if I have to do that because of the POSIX API one by one, then it costs me 50 microseconds just to wake up threads one by one. And I can use a Linux call and wake them up all at the same time in the same 50 microseconds. So that's what I did. Same thing with networking. I'm using ePOL, which is also Linux specific, and so on. So my libraries just cannot work on Windows, period. Or there must be some extreme expert in both fields, Linux and Windows, who is willing to port my code to Windows, but that's going to take him many years, I think. Even if you're an expert, because it took me that long to write it. Explain a thread. Well, no. Sorry, but yeah, that's too basic. You have to know that. You can Google it, study things. I want to finish this. If I jump out of this function in the middle of the if, well, there's only a problem if I want to get back at the same point. So yeah, I cannot really have an if scope. The scopes are the problem. So let me start with undoing all the indentation. I need to shift this back 3. Yep. Think that so the code should be correct the way it is now, but I still have this if scope here. And this is also not working, I think. What I want here is to yield, which means after a yield I can leave my multiplex implementation. But I want to get back at this point. So the return is okay. But I must take care that I set the state correctly. Now it's always okay to leave the function after a yield anyway. But also while I'm here I'm inside a different state, not this state. And so I'm changing the state here. Well, why not? And continue here. Let's the art of ASCII art comments. Okay, so that should work. But we have a scope here that is annoying. How do I get rid of this scope? I think by inverting it. If I invert the if, then we do this, and then I can jump to here. I could even use a goto. Ouch! No, well, really? Yes, I could. Shall I use a goto? What do you think? It would work, I think. I said no to me, never use a goto. Yeah, well, but what I'm trying to do now is leaving and entering a scope at the arbitrary point, which is exactly only possible when you can use a goto. So I might as well use a goto. Because if I cannot use the goto, then I failed in my objective. And I think it makes things easier because then, I have to think of a label anyway. That's right. Okay, I don't know, man. I can use a case label, but it feels almost dirty because I'm not leaving the function and re-entering. think I want to use a goto. But I need a name for it. So entering at this point here, after the if. How shall we call it? Well, this is like multi-loop magic. The bottom thereof. Bottom multi-loop magic. Nah, multi-loop magic. The trailing, or the what is a good name for? Okay, yeah. No, it's funny, Pau. Multi-loop magic. I'm not going to use it. I want a different name for footer, trailer, and finish. What's my thesaurus? What? Now I'm suddenly at the dictionary. Pretty sure it entered at the thesaurus here. And then I can type here footer, right? And then I get here. What? The thesaurus is broken. Tell me what I'm doing wrong here. What the hell, forget it. I'm just using something. Footer. Okay, so I'm going to add the scope here. Go to. So now, how is this ugly? It isn't. We have no variables in this scope, and the goto is just going exactly to the same point as it would go without a goto. And now I'm going to swap to if. Sorry, but I'm going to swap to if. So, whoop, jump to the top of the scope, put it there, or invert the if rather. There is no difference whatsoever. Really, no difference. This is 100% the same code. Except that now I have a goto here. I might as well remove this else. Still the same code. But the scope is gone. No more scope. Well, there's one scope left here because I want to leave here. this scope. I'm going to check first if this still compiles or if it is something really stupid. No member named at scope end in namespace util. Did you simply mean at scope end? Are you kidding me? It's defined outside utils. Well, must have been very brave. Use of undeclared identifier, pipeline factory top blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, I still have to add those new states. We have extra states, top of the for loop, top of the while loop. Bottom of the while loop and the bottom of the for loop, right? No, not right. Or yes, right. Bottom of the for loop. And here we have the bottom of the while loop, etc. So that should work. I also have to add these 4 things to somewhere else. Another task. There we are. Substitute comma with closing thing, comma. No. Why was, oh, it was a comma for a different reason. Substitute comma with a semicolon. Yes. Aha, meme guy, you are into serious coding? Undeclared use of undeclared identifier and ShaderInputData. Oh right, not still. Cannot. Oh. I'm going to delete this video. We're going offline right now. Stop the stream. Nobody's watching, right? Holy moly. Jump bypasses. A lot of stuff. And I thought it was no problem. But it was. And nobody warned me. I blame Paul. Of course you cannot use a goto here. Of course you cannot use it. The very idea. Okay, so instead of using this, I'll have to use another case. Bleep. I must say I'm still worried about the mentionings of. Maybe I should have a look at what it actually is saying. Cannot use of only cannot jump from this goto statement to its label. Jump bypasses variable initialization. Well, we can fix that. It's being moved. What does it do if I add a scope here? So I'm not going to jump out of that. Use of undeclared identifier. Yeah, that's cannot jump from this goto. Jump bypass initialization of. Now where is this defined? Right, that's why it has a problem with this. Well, I've kind of stand with my initial remark that if I cannot use the goto, then I cannot do what I wanted to do. So it's more like the goto is now telling me exactly where are the problems. And I have to fix those anyway. Although I have to admit that it is super annoying. For example, this prefix, I can try to test them one by one. This prefix is only used here and not below. So I can just put all of it in its own scope. And by adding the scope, I make it impossible for me to leave the multiplex implementation function in the middle of this scope and return in the middle of this scope. Leaving would be possible, but returning is not possible. And then you can say, yeah, why not? Just because of the scope? No, not really because of the scope, but if I would leave my function, like right here, so yeah, leaving, then my prefix is destroyed because I leave the scope. And if then some mysterious way I re-enter my function later at the same point, then that cannot work. The only way that can work is when I move prefix to the class as a member. And I don't want to do that because I'm not leaving here and entering here. It's just super local stuff. If I enter this scope, I will also leave this scope. I'm not going to leave in the middle. You see, there is a one-on-one relationship between the things that this goto has a problem with and the things that I have to fix. Okay, here's another one. Pipeline create info. Well, once I created this thing, it's being used here. And that's exactly what I want, I think. Okay, why is there a scope around here? It's because of the pipeline. I just added it. But then there is more that I want to include. Yeah, what the heck? I can just include everything. I just make this scope larger and larger as long as I don't want to leave it. And that includes all of this. We cannot leave this scope. Now this scope is still a problem, but at the moment it's still a scope. So, well, it's not going to complain about that. Here's a problem, pipeline index. So we have to, might as well look at it immediately. The index is being used here and printed here. Ooh, what's that? I think pipeline index. Yeah, this is a variable that is running over the pipelines that it is generating. So that then must be preserved indeed. So I just have to make it a member, I think. Let's see. This is already the top of the MultiLoop. Yeah, but still. Okay, so what we do is I assign it to be 0 here, which is not possible. Let's make it, oh boy, index. Who in his right mind call that index? So vector index, and I want to set it to 0. We have this set to 0. Brilliant name, very creative. And then it must exist and it must be a member, so I'm going to make it a member. And we're going to make it a member. Don't have to initialize this. and then I'm going to move it to the class. I don't know, just add it here. Oh no, it wants me to add a comment, what it is. Index into something, but I don't know what. Denumerating pipelines generated inside the MultiLoop. Something like that. Let's have another look at the index. It says index category, so no, we just have to literally see it being used somewhere. Oh, not here. What? Not here at all? Index, 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 index. Here's an index, okay. Update pipeline index. It's all too vague. I don't know. Just fix it in the future. Okay, there's another one here, VH pipeline layout. Then we have a scope and another scope, and then we have the label. So is this being used here, and later on there. And here again, that is in this scope. Okay, so yeah, also something that has to survive leaving the function temporarily. So I'll have to make this a member as well. And move it to this class. Well, let's see if I can figure out what goes on this dot dot dot. Don't like loose ends. Haha, that was a kind of a joke, I guess. This program is 50% loose ends. Well, okay, maybe not 50%. So somewhere I probably have a comma index, and if I don't, then there is a double colon in front of it, and then something else as well. Yes. So apparently this is the only thing, the only place, and that is inside synchronous window called mPipelines. And now I have to find back my dot dot dot. Where was it? I have no idea. Git diff dot dot. There it is. In PipelineFactory.h. Right, let's see if now it compiles. Like a good boy. Including my goto. Okay, I'm finally seeing the question of Tuina Gosh. Index what? Can you elaborate? Because I do not know what you exactly mean. Yeah, I suppose this must be now mPipeline. Set to 0. Still a problem with jumping because of this B. Set B to a random magic value to indicate that we are in the inner loop. What? And B is being used where? And why is it B? I don't use short variable names like that. Who wrote this? Okay, this is horribly annoying. B stands for begin. If B equals the numerical limits, max, yeah, and then it is the inner loop, okay. So B is the start of the next loop. And I'm going to call it start of next loop int of course I sleep. Well, that doesn't say much because I'm not really using the multi-loop. But it is encouraging that it doesn't crash, etc. Maybe I will use a range once this works. I have to test multiple other things like, I mean, I'll make it work with a single test case. So open door, it will work in the end, right? But that doesn't mean that the code is okay. So I need feedback. So what I do is I make this work with this simple test case, and then I make the test case difficult, complex, larger. If then it breaks, then oops. However, if it just keeps working, then it becomes very likely that it will work for any case. If you understand what I mean. So I think that once this works, I mean this works, but sometimes it doesn't. So if this always works, then what I can do, for example, is make many of these triangles in a row. So I put one here and one here and one here and one here and one here. I could put, I don't know, 8 triangles on a row, and each is a different pipeline. So I could use a pipeline characteristic for that. And then I can use an orthogonal pipeline characteristic that changes the texture, or the, I don't know, rotated the whole thing. Anything stupid. And then at least we would be testing it. Let's see if I can get it to fail again at some point. Yeah, so here now it doesn't work. This side is broken. Which is best? Depends on what. Well, Java is of course the worst, but what do you want to use it for? Shark is learning C++. Don't watch this video and go study. You won't learn anything here if you're just a beginner, I think. Well, unless you're one of those guys who just watch every day for hours, then I guess you pick up certain things. But yeah, I don't know. I probably should go shopping. See if the friend already messaged me back. Nothing. Oh. Well, that's disappointing. Probably should call him. Are you coming at all? Yeah, let me think. I'm going to look at it again. This whole generate thing is now kind of nonsense. Let's remove it. This should just become this state. And pipeline out. Pipeline out. Set by set pipeline. Comment is not true anymore. Something use at all. Set pipeline sets it. And it is initialized. Pipeline out as a non-const reference. Okay. Have new pipeline. Okay. Yeah, the comment is wrong, but I have no idea how to really. No, well, I just do this. No, this is also not true. Flush new data. I don't know. Whatever. LeBron, yeah, thank you. Oscar says, I saw a go-to statement in your code. Yeah, I know, man. I just put it in this stream. I must say, the reason I did it is also because I felt like, you know, there's an exception for everything. I know how much people frown on over it, but the point is that the exact reason that a go-to is not allowed or not good or problematic was exactly what I had to fix anyway, because of the fact that I wanted to leave a scope in the middle and then return there. The overlap was so, what is the word? Astonishing or whatever. Prevalent? No, I don't know. I just couldn't resist to use the go-to, and then it turned out to be, I turned out to be completely right, because I got all kinds of compiler errors because of the go-to. And I could remove the go-to, but I would not fix the problem. I had to address the compile errors that the go-to was throwing at me in order to achieve my goal. So now I can remove the go-to, but it almost helped me. What do I say? It just helped me to fix my code. So that was kind of funny. Yeah, well then they do not understand enough of it. I mean, you can say you can say something is evil, but it's not always evil. So it's a difference between people who think that something is black and white, while it is actually a little grayish. And then those people who know that it is a little bit grayish. I was going to go over the code that I just wrote, just as a final check. Okay, so now we entered the pipeline factory, the top of the MultiLoop for loop. This if do while replaces the normal MultiLoop while loop magic, except that I remove the if. And then there is an if here. What the hell? That's the while loop. Yeah, no, of course. This is the top of the for loop, which is empty. Maybe I should add in a comment. I should have added in a comment what this looks like when I use the normal multi-loop magic. I can still do that, I think. So this is really, how shall I add that? Maybe here. No, I don't like that. Can add it here. So here we have, no, it's before, right? The top of the multi loop is inside the for loop. So I'm going to add it here as for nothing. And then I do this test, which is at the bottom. So this is the old code. right? If there's a not in front of it, so if with the not in front of it, it is true, then we continue the loop. And we also enter it because it is always true the first time. Yeah, well, the finished is false, so with a not in front of it is true. And this comment is not correct anymore because I removed the do while, so we can simply enter which replaces the normal multi-loop for loop regardless. Okay, something like that. And this is also not true anymore. Well, yeah, it's not a do while anymore, but this is then mimicking the while loop, which is simply while then I have one too many, I think. Yeah. Need a bit more context, I think, for people with a bad memory like me. So this multiplex implementation function mimics, that's the right word, the usual multi-loop magic. Well, that isn't usually there, so maybe like that. Right. So you guys think that it's necessary to add a comment here, right? Because it's too dirty otherwise. Okay, I'll add a comment. Let me think about it. Kind of even protects us. So the compiler now gives errors if I do something wrong in terms of having a local variable. What? Oscar, sorry. I seldom use GDB because I think it is really shitty debugger. I mean, if you try to print something, it comes up with an excuse not to know what it is. So by far my main method of debugging is by printing debug output. I even wrote a library especially for that, so libcwd. Which I'm using in this, have been using for decades, I think. How old is it now? Yeah, 2 decades, I think. So I tried to mimic here this for loop, which means that we just enter and then at the end, well, I tested that, I looked at it already, it just works. So it's a little bit suspicious here that I'm calling break while not changing the set state, so let me check if that is safe. So the break will cause us to enter here, and then the state is always changed, so yeah, it would be safe then. The state is set here or here, so it makes no sense to set the state above. In fact, it doesn't even make sense to set the state here. for the same reason. Well, I normally do that to be clean, but well, this is far from clean. This code is not clean anymore. Anyway, right? So let's not try to pretend it is. And then the top of the while loop. This is a for loop. This is the while loop. Start with this, okay, and then I set it to state to while loop. We fall through. And then this skips to another label, or we run to it. Or we don't, because I'm going to exit the function in the middle of this somewhere at some point. Currently we are not returning or breaking, so I always get here. I think it looks good. Right. Still have this bug here, or problem. Yeah, but I should have, I'm going to call this friend. Don't know what's going on, if he's coming or not. So ending the stream here now, and then I'll be back this evening.